Who can be called a monster? Beastly creatures with bright pupils that glow in the dark, carrion eaters that wait for a weakened victim, beasts of incredible size that can destroy half a city with a swipe of a paw, magical creatures that can cast curses or reach out to their victims with spells, or maybe some people armed to the teeth who come to a person's house, take away the last piece of bread, cripple them and their families, burn down the house, slaughter the cattle. This is a difficult question to answer for sure, for sometimes humans, elves, dwarves, or even halflings do things that even the most cruel creatures are incapable of. Nevertheless, one often hears statements like, well, at least you can make a deal with a human, pay them off, trick them. Humans can be reasonable, but you cannot do anything against beasts. If it has already found you, then either fight or run if you value life. Well, the statement somehow makes sense, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes a soldier will not listen to pleas and will kill a villager on his own land anyway, especially if there is a war going on. But sometimes you can pour your soul out to a vampire and he will take pity on you. So which one of these two is the trembling creature and who has the rights? An ordinary person will answer that a vampire is definitely a monster, but some witchers, including Geralt of Rivia, will say that this has to be clarified, because intelligence is not a unique attribute of a person in the world of the Witcher. The continent is full of beasts that are even smarter than some humans, and also those who have successfully assimilated and live quietly and peacefully among humans. Today, we will talk about such creatures, for you are on the Old Witcher channel. Before we begin, we would like to thank all the patrons who support the Witcher videos on our channel. We appreciate you guys very much, because thanks to you, in many ways, we are able to make videos almost every week. And now, we present 13 intelligent monster species from the world of The Witcher and try to understand why they are called monsters despite being intelligent. Let's start with the Sirens. Yes, those same wildly screaming creatures that the Witcher Geralt of Rivia encounters and destroys in large numbers on the Skellige Islands. In the game, they are stand-up monsters that are quite easy to kill. There are many of them, and they are always aggressive. However, Pan Sapkowski's book saga shows us the Sirens from a slightly different point of view. In the story called A Little Sacrifice, Pan Andrzej tells the readers the story of the siren Sirens and the prince of Bremivord named Aglaval. The prince fell in love with a sea nymph, literally became mad about her, and confessed his love to her. But it all ended with simple words. For the sake of this love, he was not willing to sacrifice anything important. Sirens returned the prince's feelings. At the same time, the siren herself asked a familiar sorceress for help, and she transformed the nymph's fin into ladylike legs. The siren left her life in the water, her usual habitat, her people and everything she knew before, all for the sake of love. At the same time, Aglaval could not make such a sacrifice and give up his life on land. But in relationships, there is often enough sacrifice on at least one side. This story shows that even feelings do not define a person in the world of The Witcher. After all, someone who looks like a monster can also experience feelings and do much more for the sake of those feelings. This does not mean that sirens are safe or that they are no longer monsters. They still sink ships and they still don't mind tasting human flesh. The example of Sirens is just an exception to the rule, which only gives hope that sirens can be intelligent. The continent is completely dominated by mankind. Humans settled all over the land, crushing everything under them, driving out those who threatened them, and organizing everything as they saw fit. Some monsters got used to it and tried to adapt, and others, those who did not have a very developed brain, sometimes simply kind of inherit humans, thoughtlessly copy their habits, behavior, speech, and over time the rudiments of reason, emotions, thoughts are born in them, like shoots that can turn into flowers of real reason. Again, the cases are isolated, but they show that it's not so difficult to be human. In the first The Witcher game by CD Projekt Red, there's a necrophage, a Graveir named Vitala. When Geralt approaches him, the Graveir suddenly speaks and assures that he does not attack humans, but only feeds on corpses. All he really needed was peace. It is a miracle. The bloodthirsty Graveir has developed consciousness, learned human speech, and even feels compassion. It cannot give up his habits and the diet, but if he can do without violence, he actually prefers not to use violence. The third Witcher game has the same story, only instead of a graveir, there's a water hag, and among other things, she had no time to develop compassion. But this monster is very affectionate. The water hag is an ugly creature, but she seemed to think otherwise. She captured men and demanded that they sang her serenades of adoration. The hag liked flattery, and since it had learned the human language, it chose her flatterers from among the human men. Of course, you're unlikely to get a serenade from a drowner or a necker. The only problem was that when it got tired of a man, it ate him. But what do you want from a monster that was the first of its kind to gain intelligence? You cannot ask for too much, can you? Anyway, it's a very interesting specimen, and in fact, there are at least a few more of such monsters on the continent that were able to develop intelligence. Write about the ones you remember in the comments, and we might make a separate bestiary entry about them. Also, things like likes, subscriptions, and all that are welcome. Well, you know, to keep the water hag from visiting you guys. A large number of cursed people who are simply turned into monsters can also be classified as intelligent or sane. Of course, sometimes the curse is such that there is no need to talk about the monster's intelligence, as in the case of Marlene de Trastamara or Avalak, who was turned into Uma. But more often, the cursed have a chance to remove the dark magic on their own. This is why they retain their human reason during the transformation. Let us at least remember the same Emhirvar Emrace, aka the Urchan of Erlenwald. He was covered in needles until midnight and was remembered for his funny hedgehog face. But at the same time, he kept his mind and his sanity. The same can be said for Morkvarg. However, the curse slowly drove him insane. But to go mad, you have to have that intelligence in the first place. Nivelin, who was unlucky in his first bandit venture, also comes to mind. And let us not forget Vivienne de Debris. A very interesting curse awaited her. This curse was imposed by none other than the sea nymph, who was jealous of the happiness of Vivienne's mother and father. From the age of 15, Anarietta's maid of honor turned into an Oreo every night. Looks like we have another monster with intelligence. At the same time, she did not lose her mind, but was forced to refuse the courtesies of all men, not knowing what would happen to her if the secret was revealed. You guys can also remember other cursed people who kept their sanity in the comments. Well, we conclude why these people are now called monsters. It is all about appearances. Or not really. After all, if a creature is exposed to a curse for a long time, it runs the risk of going mad or succumbing completely to the curse. Cursed people are monsters, and more often than not, dangerous monsters. Sometimes it is possible to return them to a normal life, but more often than not, when there's no way out, they have to be gotten rid of. They can cause too many deaths. Next on our list are trolls. Funny, ridiculous, but quite dangerous. Their naivety and stupidity can make you smile right up until the moment they decide you have offended them. Then just run. No arguments will help. Trolls ended up on this list because they try to get along with people in their own way. They could crush and destroy you, but for some reason they are drawn to exploration, conversation, and humans in general. They envy human dexterity and a sharp mind, but they themselves were able to develop their abilities literally from scratch. Their intelligence is still in the early stages of evolution, but almost all of them have at least the potential to learn human language. And that is amazing, especially when you think about what the trolls might become in a few hundred or 1,000 years. Maybe there will be no human civilization left. Will everything be taken over by trolls who will develop their own civilization? Who knows? We say that trolls will remain monsters for the time being, if only because of their size, their stubbornness, and a fairly high degree of aggressiveness. They still solve most problems by force, and non-speaking individuals still show up from time to time. For now, humans should still avoid living with trolls. Also known as devils and pucks, Silvans love to play practical jokes on humans, even if these pranks are not very safe. They are cunning, lazy, and quite intelligent. They are considered to be a rare type of monster, but they simply prefer not to show themselves. They know what a meeting with humans will bring them, but they love to use humans. Remember the same old god who spoke with terrible voices from under the earth, gave advice to humans, and demanded gifts, usually food, from them. He was very comfortable in the underground hall, and he didn't even have to go out anywhere. Everything was brought to him by the humans. Or perhaps we should remember the servant of the ladies of the woods, who kept their peace on Bald Mountain during the Sabbath. He also settled in well, close to the powerful mistresses in a cozy cave. Why would he need anything else? There is security, there is food. Silvan is literally the personification of a lazy but a cunning human, only he doesn't look like a human. That's the only problem. Silvans communicate in perfectly understandable human language, fully aware and smart enough. What more do you need? The only question is it a monster? And the answer is probably yes. Silvan uses humans at a minimum and kills at a maximum. It is equipped with impressive hooves and sharp horns, so an ordinary person cannot deal with it, especially considering the fact that the monster likes to serve various evil witches. A much kinder but also more playful version of the Silvan is the Godling, the cutest and probably most harmless of the continent's monsters. Of course, you could argue that it has its own means of defense against enemies, but then again, who doesn't? We take the degree of aggressiveness, add the danger of the Godling to human life, and multiply it by his character. We get a naive, playful creature that loves swamps, caves, and human basements, and is unlikely to be the first to attack. It would rather help a lost traveler find his way home, but first it will play with him, confusing paths and tracks and laughing softly at the ignorant man's despair. The little godlings know how to talk. Their language is pleasant and understandable. Their thoughts rarely intersect with cruelty or death. They're curious, capable of empathy. In general, they're almost like humans. Now the conclusion is quite simple. If there is a monster in the world of The Witcher, which is called monster in vain, then it is the Godling. However, it is difficult for it to get along with humans. There are very few Godlings left, and humans, sometimes deliberately and sometimes accidentally, make sure that there is no place for them on the continent. Another example of an intelligent monster is the succubus, probably the one most adapted to the realities of the human world, a creature capable of charming and driving anyone crazy. Neither the ram's horns nor the hooves get in the way. All you need is a slender waist, a large, barely covered chest, a lazy look, a special scent, and a little succubus magic. That's it, the man is hooked, and there is no way for him to get off that hook by himself. Few mortal women can replicate the intimacy of a succubus. Succubi are beautiful, they look like humans, they are sensual, but at the same time intelligent and cunning. They feel emotion and compassion. Cruelty is not their style. But there's a problem. Their lust can turn violent. In fact, unlike a succubus, a human sometimes needs more than carnal pleasure. In the arms of a succubus, a man becomes exhausted. He loses his vitality and gradually, unable to leave the creature, he dies. Therefore, although a succubus looks like a human, it is definitely a monster. Without knowing it, it is dangerous to people and to human society in general. A succubus can take any man away from his family, just like that, just for fun. Even if it doesn't kill, it will charm a man and make him a fool in love forever. The man loses his mind, and he may lose his life. All these consequences are in the nature of a succubus, and that's why it, or she, is a monster. Next up is the dler. And things get pretty complicated here. Dlers are creatures that take on an exact copy of another creature's appearance. They can turn into a human, an elf, or a dwarf. They can become some kind of monster, sure, or they can become an animal. At the same time, they partially borrow the character and the personality of the victim, so that no one can tell the difference between a copy and the original. And depending on the victim, they change themselves. They can be both dangerous and safe. In fact, they can become an absolute copy of a person. They can live that life completely, but for some reason, they are still called monsters. Humans themselves love masks, outfits, and clothes. They just love to be seen and accepted as something different from what they really are. They treat with fear and contempt the creatures who also live other people's lives, but at the same time fit perfectly into their roles. Of course, there are many reasons for this. Imagine that your life has been stolen from you. Someone who knows your thoughts, has your memory, looks like you. It is actually scary. And it is precisely because dopplers engage in such dirty deeds that they cannot be accepted as non-monsters. The deception they live by all the time is not a virtue, and they can take too much. After all, the death of a personality in many ways is the death of a person. Finally, we came to a very rare monster that may not have existed at the time of the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt game, a creature that has two forms, a fox and a human, possessing a human language and the ability to take on a human-like form. Once upon a time, Guaras were one of the most powerful magical creatures in the Witcher world. They could create the illusion of magical islands, dragons dancing in the sky, the appearance of a huge army approaching the walls of the city, and now there are almost none left. Their magic has weakened, not very convincing, and does not last for very long. They can still use their illusions to mislead the ship, but they're incapable of truly great illusions. They have degenerated. All because humans have taken over the continent. The Guaras are all females. They cannot exist without other races. Like parasites, they steal girls from those races and turn them into were-foxes as well. It is true, their power is far behind in time, and so is the danger. They look like humans, but there is no humanity in them, none at all. That's why they are monsters. Monsters are everywhere, and most likely among those who didn't like this video or write a comment. In any case, thanks to each and every one of you for watching, and a special thanks to those who support the Witcher videos on our channel. Please watch our videos to the end and click the bell. It is very important. Write about which monsters in the Witcher universe are the most human-like, and who we didn't mention today. We did not put higher vampires, ladies of the woods, dragons and demons like Gaunter in this list. This is because comparing them to humans is ridiculous. These monsters are way too powerful. Even comparing them to sorcerers is kind of silly. However, you can still be outraged. Anyway, have a nice weekend, at least for those of you who watched this video to the end. See you soon on the channel when the old Witcher speaks once more.